The Catalyst Crisis DR. Sarah Chun was reviewing quantum field equations in her MIT laboratory when the first reports came in. Across the globe, in 12 major cities, crystalline structures had appeared overnight. Not crashed, not built, but simply materialized as if they had always been there. Each structure stood exactly 47 meters tall, composed of a translucent material that seemed to shift between purple and gold, depending on the viewing angle. Sarah stared at her computer screen as news feeds flooded in from Tokyo, London, New York, Moscow, Sydney, and 7 other locations. The structures were identical down to the smallest detail, positioned in the exact centers of each city's government district. Military cordons had been established, but the crystals remained completely inert, showing no response to any form of scanning or interaction. Dr. Chun, you need to see this. Her research assistant, David Park, called from across the lab. His voice carried an edge of panic that made Sarah's stomach tighten. She hurried over to where David stood transfixed before a wall of monitors, displaying global communications traffic. The feeds were chaotic, filled with speculation and fear. But one detail kept repeating across every channel. The crystals had begun to pulse with a soft, rhythmic light exactly 18 minutes ago. That's not the concerning part, David said, pointing to his laptop screen. Look at this. The device showed a steady decline in battery power, despite being plugged into the wall. Every electronic device in the lab was experiencing the same phenomenon. Phones were dying, computers were slowing, and the building's main power grid was fluctuating wildly. Sarah felt her scientific instincts override her fear. She grabbed her field measurement equipment and began taking readings around the lab. The electromagnetic spectrum showed massive distortions, but not random ones. The interference followed a complex pattern, almost like a code embedded in energy itself. It's not destroying our technology, she said, her voice filled with growing excitement rather than terror. It's changing it. The crystals are emitting some kind of field that's altering the fundamental properties of electronic systems. Commander Elena Volkov arrived at the lab 3 hours later, accompanied by a team of military scientists and enough security personnel to make Sarah feel like she was under arrest rather than consultation. Volkov was a stern woman with silver hair and sharp eyes that missed nothing. She had coordinated international crisis responses for over 20 years, but nothing had prepared her for this. Dr. Chun, we need answers, Volkov said without preamble. Every major power grid is failing. Satellites are going dark. Military communications are compromised. If this continues, we'll lose all technological infrastructure within 72 hours. Sarah nodded grimly. Her measurements had confirmed her worst fears. The crystal fields were expanding, slowly but steadily. Within 3 days, the interference would cover most populated areas on Earth. But she had also discovered something else, something that made her pulse race with scientific excitement. Commander, I don't think this is an attack, Sarah said, pulling up her analysis on a rapidly dimming laptop screen. The field patterns are too sophisticated, too precise. Whatever created these crystals has technology far beyond ours. If they wanted to destroy us, they could have done it instantly. Then what do they want? Volkov demanded. Sarah hesitated, knowing how her theory would sound. I think they're testing us. The fields aren't random electromagnetic interference. They're catalysts designed to force rapid adaptation in technological systems. The question is whether we can adapt fast enough. While Sarah worked to understand the crystals, Marcus Rivera was discovering the brutal reality of their effects in the field. A former military engineer turned civilian contractor, Marcus had been installing communication systems in rural communities when the crystals appeared. Now he found himself stranded in a small town in Montana as every electronic device began failing one by one. But Marcus had spent years working in remote locations where technology often failed. He knew how to improvise, how to make things work, with minimal resources. As panic spread through the town, he began organizing the residents into work groups, teaching them to build basic mechanical devices and biological alternatives to electronic systems. The old ways still work, he told a gathering of worried families in the town hall. Before we had computers and cell phones, humans built civilizations, communicated across continents, and solved complex problems. We can do it again, Marcus. Started with simple solutions. Solar stills for water purification when electric pumps failed. Wind-powered mechanical devices for essential tasks. Messenger networks using bicycles and horses when vehicles became unreliable. But as the days passed and the crystal fields continued expanding, he realized they needed something more revolutionary. That's when he met Zara Okafor through ham radio, one of the few communication methods still functioning reliably. Zara was a 24-year-old inventor in Lagos, Nigeria, who had been experimenting with biomechanical hybrid systems for her doctoral thesis. When the crystals appeared, she found that her organic electronic interfaces were not only resistant to the field effects, but actually seemed to be enhanced by them. The crystals aren't disrupting biological systems, Zara explained during their crackling radio conversation. If anything, they're amplifying certain bioelectric processes. I've managed to create a hybrid computer using engineered bacteria and organic neural networks. It's crude, but it works. Marcus felt a spark of hope for the first time since the crisis began. Can you teach others to build these systems? I'm already working on it, Zara replied. I've been sharing designs with research groups across Africa. We're calling it the Underground Network. Scientists, engineers, inventors, anyone who wants to find solutions instead of just panicking. The Underground Network grew rapidly as traditional communication channels failed, using ham radio, shortwave transmissions, and eventually biomechanical relay systems. Brilliant minds across the globe began collaborating on solutions that no single nation or institution could develop alone. They shared designs for biocomputers, organic power cells, living communication networks, and hybrid transportation systems that combined biological and mechanical components. Sarah Chun joined the network after her government funding was cut, when conventional research proved useless against the crystal fields. Working from her increasingly powerless laboratory, she made a breakthrough that changed everything. By studying tissue samples that Zara had modified with bioelectric enhancements, Sarah discovered that the crystal fields were not just disrupting electronic systems, but preparing them for something entirely different. The fields are rewriting the fundamental rules of electronic interaction, she explained during a network broadcast that reached underground researchers on 6 continents. They're creating conditions where biological and electronic systems can merge seamlessly. This isn't destruction, it's evolution. Dr. Chun's revelation came at a critical moment. The crystal fields had now encompassed most major population centers, and governments worldwide were preparing for complete societal collapse. Military forces were mobilizing for potential invasion scenarios, while civilian populations faced the reality of life without modern technology. But in thousands of small communities around the world, the underground network was proving that humanity could adapt. Villages that had lost all electronic communication were thriving with biomechanical alternatives. Cities that had lost power grids were operating on organic energy systems. Transportation networks that relied on failing vehicles were being replaced by hybrid biological mechanical systems that grew stronger in the crystal fields rather than weaker. Zara Okafor had become the unofficial leader of the practical adaptation movement. Her designs for biomechanical systems were being implemented everywhere from Alaskan fishing villages to Australian mining towns. But she had also noticed something that none of the other researchers had reported yet. "The crystals are changing," she announced during a network broadcast 6 weeks after their arrival. "The pulse patterns are becoming more complex, more responsive. I think they're learning from us, measuring our progress." Marcus Rivera, now coordinating adaptation efforts across North America, confirmed Zara's observations. "My teams have noticed the same thing. The fields seem to respond to our biomechanical systems. When we make breakthroughs, the crystals pulse brighter. When we struggle, they dim slightly, as if giving us more time." Sarah Chun felt a chill of understanding. Her analysis of the field patterns had revealed mathematical structures that could only be artificial, but she had attributed them to alien technology beyond human comprehension. Now she realized they were interactive, responsive, designed to adjust based on humanity's progress. "They're not just testing our ability to adapt," she told the network during an emergency broadcast. "They're measuring how quickly we can evolve, how creatively we can solve problems, how well we can work together under pressure. This entire crisis is an evaluation." The implications were staggering. Earth was being tested by an intelligence so advanced that it could transform the technological foundations of an entire planet as easily as a teacher might change the rules of a classroom exercise. But the test was not designed to destroy humanity. It was designed to determine whether humanity was ready for something greater. As Sarah broadcast her theory to the underground network, she watched the crystal nearest to MIT pulse with a new pattern, brighter and more complex than ever before. The pattern held for exactly 12 seconds, then faded back to the baseline rhythm that had become as familiar as a heartbeat to everyone on Earth. 12 seconds was exactly the length of her broadcast. The crystals were not just measuring humanity's progress. They were listening to every word, analyzing every innovation, evaluating every act of cooperation and creativity that had emerged from the home crisis. Sarah Chun realized that humanity was not just being tested. They were being auditioned for something that would change the future of their species forever. The question was no longer whether they could survive the crystal fields, but whether they could prove themselves worthy of whatever opportunity lay beyond this trial. The first phase of humanity's greatest test was nearing its end, and everything depended on what they had learned about themselves in the process. The evolution protocol. The morning that changed everything began with silence. For 87 days, the crystals had maintained their steady pulse, a rhythm that had become humanity's new heartbeat. Then, at exactly 12 o'clock GMT, they stopped. Every crystal on Earth went dark simultaneously, their gentle glow fading to black. For the first time since their arrival, Sarah Chun stood in her biomechanical laboratory, surrounded by the hybrid systems that had replaced every piece of electronic equipment she once relied upon. The organic computers hummed softly, their bacterial processors working in harmony with neural networks grown from modified plant cells. When the crystals went silent, she felt it as a physical absence, like the moment between heartbeats that lasts too long. "Network, this is Dr. Chun," she spoke into her bioacoustic communicator, her voice being carried across continents through a living network of modified fungi and bacterial colonies. "Are you seeing the same readings I am?" Responses came back. Within minutes from Zara Okafor in Lagos, Marcus Rivera in Montana, and dozens of other researchers who had become the backbone of humanity's adaptation effort. Every crystal worldwide had entered the same dormant state, but their field effects remained active, continuing to support the biomechanical systems that now powered much of human civilization. "It's like they're waiting for something," Marcus reported from his coordination center in what had once been a failing mining town and was now a thriving hub of biomechanical innovation. "The fields are stable, but there's a new harmonic frequency I've never detected before." Zara's voice crackled through the organic communication network with barely contained excitement. I've been monitoring the crystalline matrix structures for weeks. The pattern changes we've been seeing weren't random. They were progressive, building toward something. I think they've finished their evaluation phase. Sarah felt a mixture of anticipation and dread. Humanity had not just survived the crystal crisis. They had transformed it into an opportunity for unprecedented innovation. Cities that had lost their power grids now operated on biological energy systems that were more efficient than anything previously imagined. Transportation networks had evolved from failing mechanical systems to hybrid, biomechanical networks that could adapt and repair themselves. Communication systems had transformed from vulnerable electronic networks to robust biological webs that grew stronger under stress rather than weaker. But Sarah knew that passing the first test might only qualify humanity for an even greater challenge. The answer came 3 days later, not from the crystals themselves, but from the space beyond Earth's atmosphere. Deep space monitoring stations, now operated by biomechanical systems that could function despite electromagnetic interference, detected massive energy signatures approaching from the outer solar system. Objects were moving at speeds that defied conventional physics, heading directly toward Earth. They're not asteroids, meteors, or any natural phenomenon we've ever cataloged, reported Dr. James Liu from the Arecibo Biomechanical Observatory. These objects are artificial, enormous, and they're decelerating as they approach. Someone is coming to visit. The objects entered Earth's orbital space exactly 1 week after the crystals had gone dormant. There were 3 vessels, each one a geometric impossibility that seemed to shift between dimensions as observers tried to focus on their details. They maintained a perfect triangular formation above Earth's equator, completely motionless relative to the planet's surface. Sarah Chun found herself selected as part of humanity's first contact team, along with Marcus Rivera, Zara Okafor, and Commander Elena Volkov. They were chosen not by any government or international organization, but by consensus among the underground network that had become humanity's true leadership during the crisis. Their meeting location was equally symbolic, the Crystal in Geneva, which had begun pulsing again with new patterns that seemed almost welcoming. The aliens who emerged from the lead vessel were unlike anything humanity had imagined. They appeared to be composed of the same crystalline material as the structures they had placed on Earth, but their forms were fluid, shifting between geometric shapes and configurations that suggested vast intelligence organized in ways human. Minds struggled to comprehend. The lead entity, which introduced itself through bioacoustic resonance as senior architect Tithara, communicated in mathematical concepts that required the hybrid biomechanical translation systems humanity had developed during the crisis. Even then, understanding came slowly, like learning a language based on entirely different concepts of reality. Your species has surprised us. Kithara's translated communication rippled through the bioacoustic network. In 93 evaluations of developing civilizations, none have responded to the Catalyst Protocol as effectively as humanity has demonstrated. Sarah stepped forward, her biomechanical recorder capturing every nuance of the interaction. The crystals were a test then. You were evaluating our ability to adapt. The Catalyst Protocol serves multiple purposes, Kithara replied. It identifies civilizations capable of technological evolution beyond their current limitations. It measures creative problem-solving under extreme pressure. Most importantly, it evaluates collaborative potential across cultural and geographical divisions. Marcus Rivera, his engineering mind immediately grasping the implications, asked the question everyone was thinking. What happens to species that fail your test? The response came with harmonics that suggested something between sadness and necessity. Species that cannot adapt to the Catalyst Protocol typically destroy themselves within the evaluation period. They become trapped in failing systems, fight over diminishing resources, or collapse into chaos when their technological dependencies are disrupted. The crystals eventually become monuments to civilizations that could not evolve beyond their limitations. Zara Okafor, her biomechanical sensors analyzing the aliens' energy patterns, detected something unexpected. You're not just evaluating us for failure or success. You're looking for something specific, aren't you? Some particular quality or capability? Kithara's form shifted into a configuration that the translation systems interpreted as approval mixed with anticipation. Correct. The galactic community requires civilizations that can thrive in hybrid technological environments. Traditional electronic systems fail in the energy fields that permeate most inhabited regions of the galaxy. Biological systems alone lack the computational power necessary for interstellar civilization. But hybrid biomechanical systems, such as humanity has developed, can operate in any environment. The revelation was staggering. Humanity hadn't just passed a test. They had developed exactly the technological foundation that galactic civilization required. Their forced adaptation to biomechanical systems wasn't just survival. It was evolution toward a form of technology that would make them valuable partners rather than primitive subjects. You're offering us membership in a galactic community, Commander Volkov said, her military training allowing her to cut through the diplomatic implications to the core issue. What are the terms? Kithara's response revealed the true scope of what humanity had accomplished. There are no terms. You have demonstrated the three essential qualities: technological adaptability, creative problem-solving, and collaborative capacity across divisions. These cannot be taught or imposed. They must emerge naturally from a species' fundamental characteristics. Sarah felt a surge of pride mixed with responsibility. What other species have passed your evaluation? In this galactic region, 4 species have successfully completed the Catalyst Protocol over the past 12,000 Earth years. Humanity would be the 5th, and the first to develop hybrid biomechanical systems to the level of sophistication you have achieved during the evaluation period. The implications were overwhelming. Not only had humanity passed the test, they had excelled beyond what was typically expected. The biomechanical innovations developed by the underground network were apparently more advanced than what most civilizations achieved even after joining the galactic community. But Zara had detected something else in the alien communication patterns, a complexity that suggested the offer came with deeper implications. You're not just inviting us to join your community as members. You want us to help solve problems that other civilizations can't handle, don't you? Kithara's form shifted into a pattern that conveyed both confirmation and respect. The galactic community faces challenges that require exactly the type of innovative adaptation humanity has demonstrated. There are regions of space where traditional technology fails, situations that require the hybrid approach you have pioneered, problems that need the type of collaborative creativity your species has shown. Marcus Rivera understood immediately. You need us not because we've learned to copy your technology, but because we've developed something you don't have. Our hybrid systems aren't just alternatives to traditional electronics. They're superior. For certain applications. Correct, Kithara confirmed. Your biomechanical systems are more adaptable, more resilient, and more creative than purely technological or purely biological alternatives. Most importantly, they emerged from your species' natural inclination toward cooperative innovation under pressure. Sarah Chun realized that the greatest test had not been whether humanity could survive the crystal crisis, but whether they could emerge from it as something greater than they had been before. The underground network had not just solved technological problems. They had created a new model for how civilizations could work together across all boundaries when faced with existential challenges. What happens now? Sarah asked. Kithara's response carried harmonics of anticipation and possibility. Now you choose. The crystals will remain as interfaces between your hybrid systems and galactic communication networks. You may continue developing as an independent world while participating in galactic civilization, or you may join us more directly in addressing the challenges that face all intelligent species. The choice was presented not as an ultimatum, but as an opportunity. Humanity could maintain their independence while gaining access to galactic knowledge and civilization. They had earned the right to participate as equals rather than subjects, partners rather than primitives. Sarah looked at her companions, seeing the same mixture of excitement and determination in their eyes that had driven them through the crisis. They had proven that humanity's greatest strength was not any individual capability, but their collective ability to transform challenges into opportunities for growth. "We'll need time to discuss this with our people," Commander Volkov said, diplomatically. "Of course," Kithara replied. "The choice must emerge from the same collaborative process that enabled your success with the Catalyst Protocol. The crystals will provide communication access whenever you are ready." As the alien vessels departed, leaving only the possibility of future contact, Sarah Chun stood before the Geneva crystal and felt the weight of humanity's achievement. They had been tested by forces beyond their comprehension, and had not just survived, but excelled. They had transformed a crisis that should have destroyed their civilization into the foundation for something greater than any single world could achieve alone. The crystals continued to pulse softly, no longer as monuments to challenge, but as gateways to possibility. Humanity had proven that what was meant to destroy them had indeed made them stronger, and now they faced a future limited only by their collective imagination and determination to keep growing beyond every boundary they encountered. The greatest test was over, but the greatest adventure was just beginning.